Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Knowledge at Noon. Today's event is called Mindfulness, a foundation for meaningful connection. My name is Jonathan Henry, and I am going to bring in our guest right now. So, our guest presenter today is faculty at Georgetown University within the Institute for Transformational Leadership. And here we go, add pin. Here we go. So I would like to introduce everybody to Jennifer Miller. So Jen is a MA, NBC-HWC. So I'll let her go through all of this, but she's an experienced health and wellness coach who allies individuals to improve well-being of their body, mind, and spirit. Jen is also, like I said, faculty within our health and wellness coaching program here within the Institute for Transformational Leadership. That's part of the School of Continuing Studies here at Georgetown. So without further ado, welcome and welcome to our presentation today.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And hello, everybody. I'm so glad that you've taken time to be with us here this afternoon. I am curious, as Jonathan said at the beginning, I invite this to be, interactive. I'd like to hear from you as well as you hearing from me. I'm curious, and you can go ahead and just type this into chat. What brought you here today? What is it that piqued your interest? And I'll give a moment to let that come into the chat. So I'm seeing learning more about mindfulness and making better connections with colleagues. Another person is recognizing the need to slow down and pay attention to what's going on around me. Excellent, thank you. Another person is looking at growth for a leadership role. So maybe bringing this into that new role or an existing role that you want to grow. Mindfulness for another person sounds very personal, but curious how to help it make better connections. Wonderful, thank you. Another person trying to find their own center. Another person says it sounds like a great topic and connection between what's happening in me and the connection of what's unfolding. And another person's looking to slow down for themselves and their clients. So thank you. Thank you for sharing what's bringing you here. So this largely aligns with the reason that we're sharing this presentation. And I'm just going to ask Jonathan to pull up a slide so that you can see kind of the plan for today. This is the idea that we had as we were coming into this space. I think you'll see that it largely aligns with what you're talking about. And I'm also happy to have this shift and adjust to what your interests are. So we're going to go to the third slide, Jonathan. One more. There we go. One back. Today's plan. So to start, I'm just going to get you situated in this program, where mindfulness shows up and why it's so important in this program for this relation to creating meaningful connection. I'm going to share with you our why around this piece. And also we'll have a chance to explore mindfulness, what it is and isn't, deepen that connection between mindfulness and meaningful connection, and also give you an opportunity to experience some mindfulness as we go through the rest of our time together. So Jonathan, if you'll bring up the next slide. Health and wellness coaching. On the slide, you can read this definition. This is the definition that is put forth by the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaches. This is our governing body, our main credentialing body. It was formed in 2013 and has really been working to establish the professional standards of this profession. You'll see that coaching is really a client-centered process to facilitate and empower the client to achieve their self-determined goals. We're using our skills, both our skills of how we're relating to them and also how we're engaging with them, to help them make the changes that they most desire. I do want to make a note here that the things that are bolded are bolding. They're things that we wanted to emphasize. So we're in a place of facilitating and helping them to mobilize their strengths and direction, their resources for where they want to go. Next slide, Jonathan. Why health and wellness coaching? This is a newer profession, and it has really been going through an exponential growth trajectory. The reason that it's taking on such an important role is one, because most health condition and costs are really driven by lifestyle related diseases. These are chronic diseases that relate to how we're eating, how we're moving our bodies or not, the quality of sleep that we're getting, but also things like the relationships that we have, the access that we have to different resources. Wellness coaching builds on this shift in medicine over the last few decades toward a more collaborative, patient-based approach that recognizes that we're working with people who are living complex lives. And so what coaching does is allow us to have meaningful conversations with people around what's contributing to their current level of health and well-being, drawing on their knowledge of what they need to be making shifts to bring about a better level of health and well-being, and then helping them think through the how to. How do I put this in place in my life in a way that's meaningful and sustainable? Coaching really focuses on strengths and values and the pinnings of positive psychology. And we've found over time it's really effective. What we see in the scope of health and wellness today is that providers have limited amounts of time with patients for the most part, 15, 20 minutes. The role of the wellness coach is to step in and allow time for more conversation, more personalized conversation that lets us see where the clients are coming from, and again, help them to think through their way forward. Next step, Jonathan. I'm sorry, next slide. So I wanted to share with you some of the key foundational principles that are really underpinning health and wellness coaching. One is the understanding that we all have capacities for self-repair that can be fostered by our lifestyle choices and also therapies or relationships that can be supportive. There's the recognition that health is a journey that requires kind of constant attention. It's not a matter of getting to a spot. I often think of climbing a mountain when I'm thinking about like the coaching journey or the health journey. We have in mind a summit, and it takes work to get there. But we also don't typically stay on that summit. Things change. We want to go somewhere else. So at the health and wellness coaching journey over the course of our lives might be summiting many mountains. And it's a process of thinking about what do we have, where are we going, what do we need, basically, how do we resource ourselves to be able to make this journey a meaningful and successful one. The last thing that I really want to underscore is that there's this piece of offering a non-judgmental presence. What we see in relational support systems like therapy, coaching, is that the quality of the relationship itself is one of the biggest determinants in the success of the other person. So what we're really aiming to do is to orient ourselves as coaches in a way that creates a safe space for this other person to be their whole human selves, trusting their knowledge and expertise in themselves, and helping them to develop more self-awareness through our reflections, through our questions that open up more possibilities for them. And so this is where we're going to start moving into some of the ways that we're relating to people that help to bridge mindfulness and meaningful connection. Jonathan, if you'll go to the next slide. So just a little bit more orientation here. As health and wellness coaches, different than maybe other supports or supportive relationships that people are in, we're really staying on the left side of this column. We're aiming to be in a place where we're asking rather than telling. We're listening in an open way that's taking in what our clients are offering to us beyond their words. So it's also listening for their expressions, their tone of voice, the speed at which they're talking, their body language, hearing maybe sometimes what's not being said, and keeping that in our awareness as we're going through our conversations. We're offering them reflections. We act like a mirror, and a mirror that can look at them from different angles to help them see themselves more fully. We aim to be in a place where we're following the direction that our client is wanting to go. And we're also at times walking beside them, seeing what they're seeing, and maybe noticing things that aren't quite in their view, again, so that they have more information to work with. We're really focused on holding space. So these conversations, while oftentimes they might be short, a typical coaching session in a large organization might be 20 minutes long or 30 minutes long. So even within a short period of time, it's creating a sense of spaciousness so that exploration and thinking can happen. And we also really aim to stay in a place of curiosity, being aware of what assumptions what we might have, directions that we might be inclined to nudge somebody, but staying in a place where we're curious and really able to hear them and learn about what the world looks like from their point of view. Next conversation or next slide. Wow. So one of the things that we highlight at the start of our wellness coaching program is this sense of creating a thinking space. We invite students to think about how they create a thinking space for each other, but this is also something that we do for our clients as coaches, and it's something that any of us can do in the relationships that we have. This concept of the thinking space or the thinking environment draws on the work of Nancy Klein. Two main things that we highlight are one, the quality of everything that we do depends on the quality of the thinking that we do first. There's a tendency in our society and our culture to dive into action. I need to lose weight. I need to do this. I need to get more fit. I need to do this. What research has found is that what's most helpful is thinking through some pieces before that. What's making this important? Really thinking about your motivators or your reasons for doing something. It's coming up with a plan. It's thinking about what's realistic in your day-to-day life and starting small so that you can build into it. So it's really, thinking ahead. It's advanced problem solving skills sometimes alongside the motivators. The other thing to consider with a thinking environment is that the quality of our attention, where our attention goes, directly impacts the quality of the other person's thinking. So we're aiming to be mindfully present so that the other person that we're with can have our full attention and also be mindfully present. Next slide, Jonathan. So there are, I believe, 10 overall components that Nancy Klein outlines when she's thinking about a thinking environment. The four that we really highlight in this program are attention, ease, appreciation, and equality. Attention and ease are really fostered by mindfulness. One of the mantras that we have that is given to us from Nancy is the sense that ease creates and urgency destroys. So we're really looking to be rooted in the present moment, not getting ahead of ourselves, not thinking far down the conversation, really being where we are in the present moment helps to create the sense of okayness. I'm going to just pause here for a moment, and Jonathan, you can take the slides down for a moment. Are there any questions or thoughts that are coming up that you'd like to share into chat? Okay, I'm not seeing anything come in. I'm just going to wait one more moment in case there's just a little bit of a lag. Nope. Okay, I'm going to take that as continue forward. So Jonathan, if you'll bring up the slides again, and we'll go to the next slide. So as this relates to coaching, in the first class that we have here in the Certificate for Health and Wellness Coaching program, and also as a foundation for how we're working with our clients, is this sense of the relationship is one of the most important pieces. There's another mantra that we keep in mind: relationship before results. We need to have a trusting relationship, one that's built on knowledge of each other's expertise, also knowledge of each other's strengths, values, the directions that we're trying to get to, the needs that we have personally, but also maybe together. So this is something that we are really spending a lot of time with in our first class and that we reinforce through the arc of the program. The two main elements that we're focusing on here are presence. One of the core competencies of being a coach is being present in the moment. And the other is creating rapport with the people that we're engaging with. Jonathan, you can bring up the next slide. So here we're thinking not so much what we do as coaches. We're really thinking about how are we being with our clients. This is the way we're orienting our perspective and our attention. And also it has to do with how we're managing ourselves. Oftentimes in relational conversations, we're looking for where we can add into the conversation in a way that says, me too, like I've shared this, I've experienced this. And what we're looking to do here is to take ourselves out of the conversation in terms of the content, but being fully engaged in the conversation in a place of curiosity, being with the other person in a way that helps them to feel seen and heard and understood. Next slide. So this brings us to mindfulness. One of the core being skills that we offer in the program and that is available to you in the world is that of mindfulness. From this picture, you can see like we're often kind of struggling between two different states of being. The mind full of what's going on, what's coming next, what happened in the past. And there's also another opportunity to lean into a more open space that might be sometimes more accessible to our canine friends, but it's definitely something that we can cultivate for ourselves. So mindfulness, well, let's go to the next slide and I'll give you some orientation. So I'm going to share with you two different perspectives on what mindfulness is. The first definition or explanation of mindfulness draws from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction. He talks about mindfulness as a means of paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and not judgmentally. So there are a number of different facets here. Essentially what he's getting at, it's tuning in to the moment as it is and accepting it for what it is without judgment. Jonathan, if you'll bring up the next slide. To do this, to foster this presencing, he offers a guide of 5 different attitudes that we can hold to become more mindful. This place of not judging, of just noticing in it with like kind of a neutral lens. Oh, this is here in this moment. Not assigning it a good or bad, not necessarily creating a definition or meaning for why it's here, just noticing it's here. The other is having a sense of patience. Our minds are designed to notice changes and to be scanning our environment. So it's just recognizing that this is part of what it means to be human and allowing space for that. We're not going to always be able to be mindful perfectly. We bring a beginner's mind, this sense of this is a new moment, even if it feels similar to moments that we've had before. We've never experienced this one before. So, really staying in a place of what could this be? I'm not sure. An openness. There's also an element of trust. In coaching, this often shows up as trusting that we will find a helpful next step, trusting that together we're going to be able to highlight what's most important and what's needed to move forward. It's trusting each other to not be judgmental, to have patience with the process. There's also an element of non-striving. We do hold a sense maybe sometimes of where we want to be, but it's also relating to patience, recognizing that there's a process. There are steps to take. It's not necessarily going to happen in one fell swoop. Acceptance, I touched on a little bit with non-judging, really accepting, which means recognizing what is. It's not necessarily agreeing with, it's just kind of acknowledging this is the way it is. There's also a sense of letting go of needing the experience to be in a particular way and just letting it be what it is. So I'm thinking here, let's just take a moment and experience a little bit of mindfulness. So building on this sense that mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way on purpose, what we're going to do is direct our attention to the sensation of the breath. This is a classic technique for helping to focus the mind and to root us into the present moment. A lot of mindfulness techniques root us in sensations of the body because our bodies can only be living in the present moment. So while our minds can take us to the future or to the past, take us to hypotheticals and imaginary places, our bodies will always ground us in the here and now. If focusing on the breath is challenging for you, you can focus your attention instead on a contact point, like where your feet are meeting the floor or where your hands might be resting on your lap. So to move into this mindfulness moment, I invite you to arrange your bodies so that your feet can be flat on the floor. Your posture can be upright with a sense of relaxed dignity, and your hands can be resting on your lap, by your side. Your choice whether you keep your eyes open or closed. If you keep your eyes open, just let them cast downwardly and softly focus at a point ahead of you. And to start, I invite you to just take a few long, slow, deep breaths. Letting your lungs fully take in a breath and then fully expel that breath. And then after you've taken a few of those breaths, allow your breathing to find a natural, easy rhythm. And then I invite you to direct your attention to the end of your nose, where the air passes in and out through your nostrils. And for the next few moments, the invitation is to let your attention be fully focused on that sensation. Noticing the feeling of the in-breath and how it shifts to the feelings of the out-breath. Noticing maybe the change in temperature between the two sides of the breath. And noticing too, if your mind starts to feel restless or distracted or like it's gone somewhere else, taking a moment to just recognize that and redirect your attention to the sensation of the breath. In a moment, we'll bring our attention back to this shared space. To transition back, I invite you to take one more deep breath. Open or refocus your eyes into the space around you. And then just take a moment and notice how you feel in this moment. And notice what might have changed. So comparing yourself how you felt before you did this mindfulness exercise and how you're feeling now. And I'm curious, what are you noticing? What happened during that experience? Feeling calmer. Great. Stopped trying to multitask. Wonderful. Physical body has relaxed, shoulders, neck. So you're pulling forward a lot of the benefits that come with mindfulness. It gives us an opportunity to slow down, to let go of any tension that might have been building up. Somebody was doing a mindful meditation, a walking meditation, and was able to slow down. So one of the things that mindfulness does is really help us to become more fully aware of what's happening for us in the present moment. One way to kind of play with this is to think about the receptivity between something that's hard and something that's soft. So I invite you for a moment to find something nearby. It could be your leg, it could be a pillow if you have something nearby, a sweater, something kind of soft. Make your hand really rigid and just stroke your hand on that surface and kind of notice what type of information do you get through your hand. And then shake your hand out, soften it. And with a soft hand now, go back and touch that same thing. And notice what you notice differently with a soft hand. A lot more detail. Yeah, you can feel the actual texture rather than maybe just having an impression of it. So when we can be in this like softer space, when we can be in a place where our body and our minds are more relaxed, we can take in more information. And I'm seeing somebody shared in, it actually feels softer when I'm softer. So this brings me to another thought. We talk about metaphor as a really valuable skill in these coaching conversations. I have heard metaphor also be described not just like as images, but as lived experiences. And so there's been studies that show when we're sitting on a hard chair, we tend to have a harder perspective than when we're sitting in a softer chair. When we're holding a cup of something warm, we tend to be warmer, more relaxed than when we're holding something cold and might be a little bit more tense or kind of contracted. So this is one of the benefits of mindfulness. It helps us to cultivate ourselves as this warm, soft, receptive presence that fully takes in what we're engaging with. Here it was some soft object, but when we're talking with people, it's helping us to really tune in to the depth, the texture of their wholeness. Any questions or other thoughts that you want to share before I move on to the next slide? All right. So, Jonathan, let's go on to the next slide. So, when we're thinking about mindfulness and how we might go about this, and I want to say actually here that part of mindfulness is an attitude. It's this choice to be engaged with the present moment in a non-judgmental, attentive way. Mindfulness can also be a set of practices, and there can be formal practices and informal practices that are aimed at developing our capacity to be in the present moment with acceptance and non-judgment. So in terms of like formal approaches, we can be engaged in still meditation, which might be seated or standing. Generally, lying down is not recommended because a lot of us have a tendency to fall asleep. So staying in a seated or standing position. And like one of our participants today, you can also be meditatively in movement. That might be going for a walk, and it might be doing something like yoga, qigong, tai chi. What you're doing is training yourself to be attentive to what's happening moment to moment. And also, you're training your attention to noticing when you get distracted and purposefully choosing to bring yourself back to the chosen focus. Informally, mindfulness can be just tuning yourself into your bodily sensations, your thoughts or emotions in a moment. Classically, if you are at like a meditation center, they might ring a bell every so often through the day. And whenever you hear that bell, it serves as a cue to just stop and tune in. What's it like to be alive in this moment? How does it feel to be me? How can I bring myself more to what's happening um, right where I am versus where my mind would have wandered to? So you can set a chime on your phone to give you a little reminder. You can also just set an intention. When I'm doing a daily activity like eating lunch, I'm going to make a choice to be more mindful, mindful of the visual, the taste, the sound, the feel of the food that I'm eating. We might choose to bring mindfulness to an experience of a strong emotion. Oftentimes, when we are feeling emotions come up, we get to a place where we're trying to push them away or subdue them, get them out of our way. It can be an opportunity to just learn more, to just let the emotion kind of move through us and notice what it's about, what it's telling us. Emotions are often bringing us a piece of information around what's important to us, what we're needing. And mindfulness can also be practiced when we're conversing with others, taking in not just the words that they're saying and the response that we want to give to them, but being in an open place of curiosity. What are they saying? But also, what am I seeing in their face, the movements of their body? What am I feeling in the space between us? What am I noticing happening in myself? So that we can be aware and we have more options of where to go from there. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on, and if a question pops up, I'll give that some attention. So we've been talking about mindfulness in the form of mindfulness-based stress reduction, which itself was built out of traditional meditative practices, largely from the Buddhist tradition. So there is a strong kind of like meditative element to it. There's another form of mindfulness that we talk about in the program, which is born out of the research by Ellen Langer, who's a social psychologist at Harvard. She became curious about mindfulness by studying what she called mindlessness. How is it that we can be walking down the street and like walk into a signpost or go through any number of like automatic behaviors that have us out of sync with what's happening in the current environment? So she got curious about like what cultivates a sense of mindfulness? What helps us to be more present in our day-to-day activities? So she describes mindfulness as the process of actively noticing new things. When you do that, it puts you more into the present. It makes you more sensitive to the context and perspective. It is the essence of engagement. And so, whereas in mindfulness-based stress reduction, we're stepping outside a little bit, we're taking on a little bit more of an observational role. Here, we're moving in a little bit more, actively noticing, questioning, evaluating what's in the space around us. And if you'll go to the next slide. For her and this approach to mindfulness, it's actively engaging your mind, setting the intention to notice new things. We can have a tendency to reference past experiences or anticipate what something means. So it's an opportunity to say, well, what am I actually noticing beyond my assumptions? And it's also about drawing novel distinctions. So thinking about how we're relating to the information that we're taking in. One of the things that she talks about, or some of the hallmarks that she directs us to attend to, are creating new categories or labels or distinctions. This often is happening in the coaching conversations when somebody's talking about a behavior that they're not liking or that they see as not serving them. Sometimes we get curious and say, but how is it serving you? An analogy might be we have a definition of a table as a place where we sit to eat. And that is true in many contexts. But there are other contexts where a table might be a storage surface. I know my tables tend to be where I put piles of paper and books. Tables can also be a step stool. It can help us get to something high up. This can sometimes serve as a barricade or something to hide underneath. So depending on the context, depending on where something is showing up, it might not be the thing that we originally thought it was. When we engage mindfully in this way, we can come to have a deeper appreciation for why things are the way they are, and also get curious about what else could they be. In this mindful space, we are receptive to new information. We're questioning or aware of our assumptions. We also invite information that can come to us from different perspectives, or we strive to take different perspectives to think about what might we see here? If I was the other person, what would I be seeing? If I was a fly on the wall, what new information might be available to me? As I mentioned earlier, we're also considering context. How might this person, this situation be impacted by the larger context? And how might we play with that to bring about a shift? And there's also a focus on process. And this is another thing that's really important in the coaching process. We're focused on the process, the relationships, the conversation, the exploration before focusing on, are we at the outcome or not? Next slide. So I've been touching on some of the benefits that come with mindfulness through our conversation, and you've experienced some of them in the brief mindfulness moment we did a moment ago. There's a feeling of being calmer. There's enhanced focus and also deeper, more creative thinking. These are some of the things that are happening like internally with our like minds and emotions. We also often experience improved health and well-being, mental, emotional, and physical. Next slide. And you can just go ahead and pull up so what mindfulness, like kind of in summary, what mindfulness is doing is helping us to self-regulate, but it's also helping us to be more fully present for what's happening in ourselves and also to noticing and being with what's happening in another person. It gives us an opportunity to connect there. And what comes to my mind when I'm thinking about this is it's like the study of martial arts or even general physics. We're strongest when we're doing things that are closest to our body. The further we reach out and extend ourselves, sometimes the more imbalanced that we can be, more imbalanced we can become. So rooting ourselves in our present moment, rooting ourselves in what's happening, gives us a place of strength to be operating from. And it also helps us to really dance in the moment and be curious. And I'm seeing a message come up in chat. This also makes me think of how it bridges to neuroplasticity. Yeah. So, neuroplasticity, for those that don't know, is this idea of the brain being able to change. And we know that the brain can grow and learn and change up until our last breaths. With neuroplasticity, we can self-direct it. And some of what we're doing for mindfulness is cultivating a mental and emotional state of equanimity, of, again, acceptance and curiosity, and a place that we're not engaged in judgment. The last piece that's kind of popping into my mind at the moment is information that's laid out in the book, The Anatomy of Peace, which is talking a lot about like how do we come to peace with other people? How do we have harmonious relationships? And they talk about the orientation of our perspectives or our hearts. Are we at war with, or are we at peace with? When we're at war, we're tending to look at the other as a problem that needs to be fixed, an object that we need to do something with. When we tap into like the place of peace, we are more receptive and understanding that we're engaging with other people who, just like us, have needs, hopes, dreams, challenges. So we can work together to find ways to get needs met for both rather than one or the other winning. Um, I've covered a lot of different topics or facets of this. What I'd like to do just is come to one more slide, and then we'll open up for some questions and answers or another mindfulness experience. So I hope I've been laying down this foundation for how mindfulness relates to this sense of meaningful connection or rapport. This is the other thing that we're really fostering in ourselves as coaches, and hopefully as people that want meaningful relationships with others. Rapport is really talking about a relationship where there is harmony, a relationship where there is mutual understanding, and a sense of empathy so that communication between the two can be as easy and open as possible. When we're engaging mindfully, we have an opportunity to recognize where we're at and think about how might I orient myself differently, while also tuning into what the other person is expressing and being curious about that so we can come to places where we have more shared understanding. So I'm going to end with the slides there. So Jonathan, if you want to take those down, you're welcome to. I'm curious what's been standing out for you as you've been hearing this presentation and taking in some of the questions. That this is one of the biggest areas you need to work on. And another person's expressing the appreciation for looking at these different angles of mindfulness. And yeah, that opportunity to experience the difference between coming at something with a hard perspective versus a soft. And to me, that really connects to the sense of like, am I at war with or am I at peace with? When we're at war, we're like suited up and tense, oftentimes. When we can move into that place of like peaceful curiosity, we can be more open and receptive. The value of of slowing down and being more intentional, and that emphasis that it's not just about being present with ourselves, but it's really thinking about how to be present with other people. On that note, I think sometimes about, and I invite you to think about where are times that you've felt most seen and what that offered to you. I often think back to a moment I had at a store years ago when I had waited to the last moment to shop for a present. I knew what I wanted to get. I just hadn't made the time to get it. I had no other options. I had to go to the store. And I had been hit by a miserable head cold. I was dragging. It took every ounce of energy to get to the store. I picked out the things that I wanted. I went up to the counter to purchase it, and the perky salesperson behind the counter started to ask, did you see our specials? Are you signed up for our member rewards? And all of these other questions. I'm just like, I just want to purchase my soaps. There was another employee who kept looking at this interaction, who finally just looked at me and said, would you like a bottle of water? I was so grateful. She saw that I was low on energy and feeling pretty miserably and thought about what might this person need and asked about that. A simple thing, but this is something that we can offer to people. Being curious about what's brought them to this moment. How are they showing up? How can I best connect with them? And what might I offer? And a lot of that comes from being mindful, not getting caught up in our agenda, but recognizing what has presented itself before me. Looking at your comments again, I'm seeing the threads of like mindfulness helps us to be in this kind of curious, open, respectful place and helps us to create that space interpersonally. And yes, that mindfulness can really help us to tap into more creativity, not just making us feel calm. Calmness or equanimity is often an outgrowth of mindfulness, but it's not necessarily the end game. What we're really looking to do often is have control over our minds, have more influence over where our attention's going and how it's being spent. Um, I see a question, will we be doing this again? That's not in the works, but I wouldn't say it's out of the possibility. Before we go, how about if we do another mindfulness moment together? Um, so this is a mindfulness moment that I go to a lot. And actually, I don't think I had mentioned this before. I find it really helpful for me to be in a mindful space before I engage in a conversation. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'm becoming mindful as I'm talking. Um, Other times when I can make the choice, I find it really helpful to take a few deep breaths, to center in to the present moment, And I also find it helpful to invite people to do that with me. So I'm usually opening coaching calls with a question of, would it be helpful to start with a mindfulness moment? I've opened meetings where we're all taking a chance, taking a shared opportunity to go through a mindfulness practice. Sometimes in the middle of a conversation that's going kind of off the rails, I'll ask, can we take a moment to just like recenter and offer a mindfulness moment? So these are things that we can do to really help us navigate the current moment so that we can be fully present. So let's just take again a few moments. This is drawing a little bit on a meditation called The Wheel of Awareness by Dan Siegel. We're not going to do the whole thing, but we'll do part of it. And what we're doing here is awakening our awareness of our lived experience. So again, just arrange your bodies so that your posture can have this upright feeling of relaxed dignity. Feet are connecting to the strong, stable surface of the ground beneath you. Hands resting on your lap or by your sides. And eyes open or cast downwardly with a soft focus. So first, I invite you to just tune in to your sense of hearing, noticing the sounds in and around you, not reaching for them or trying to pull them towards you, just letting the sounds arrive as they do. And not trying to make them different or other than they are, just recognizing, oh, this is the sound of now. From the sense of sound, we'll shift to the sense of sight. With closed eyelids, this means like taking in perception of light through the eyelids and maybe the dance of shapes and colors behind your eyelids. With eyes open, it's directing attention to the color, the light, the shapes that surround you in a soft way. From the sense of sight, we'll shift to the sense of smell. Taking in a deep breath and noticing what's the aroma of the environment you're in, or what are the aromas that are present. And if nothing's readily available, you can rub your hands together and just inhale your warmed skin. Shifting from the sense of smell to the sense of taste. This might just be noticing the taste of your mouth. And if that's not obvious, opening and closing it for a moment or moving your tongue around can awaken that sense. And if you have something at hand, something that has a flavor or a taste and is edible, you can go ahead and take a taste of that. And then shifting from the sense of taste to the sense of touch. This might noticing your hands resting on your lap or your clothing rubbing against your skin. And then just expanding your awareness to take in the fullness of all of these sensations that are at play, holding them all in your awareness for a moment. Tuning into the sensory symphony of life. Now letting go of that focus, just sit for a moment in a space of open awareness. Just being with life as it is in this moment. And this one. And this one. And now I invite you to bring your attention back to our shared space so that I can hand the reins over to Jonathan, who has a few details to share with you. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. for asking your questions, sharing your reflections. And I hope that we have an opportunity to see you again in the future.
All right. Thank you so much, Jen. This is really helpful, even on a personal standpoint,
You're
with
welcome.
my own journey that I was talking to you about beforehand.
You're
So,
welcome.
um, so for everybody, as you've gathered here, we do have a certificate in health and wellness coaching. Jen is one of the faculty members on this program as well. So I'd be remiss if we didn't share our upcoming programs, things like that. But in addition, we also have other certificate offerings, of course. I won't hog the spotlight on those right now, but you can check them out. And then we have our social media links as well. So you'll receive a copy of all this information, so there's no need to rush out right now. But the last initiative before we kind of start wrapping this up is that we do recognize the impact of federal downsizing. And Georgetown, back in March, launched an initiative, especially within the school continuing studies, that we're offering 30% tuition discounts on eligible programs as well for those who have been recently displaced. This also includes career advising from our Director of Integrated Career Development, Dr. Lisa Andrews. So this can help with those aspects of it as well if you or anyone else you know are impacted from the federal downsizing. So it's just basically it'll be for the next, well, at this point, not 12 months, but essentially, I don't know, I can't do math, right? It's going to go till March of next year. So with that being said, I will stop the screen share. I think we're about at our time limit. So what I want to do is invite Jen. Do you have any last thoughts, last words for our audience today?
Um, just thank you. Thank you. And the invitation is to go out and practice. Um, Finding ways, sometimes it's just little ways. The mindfulness moments we did today were a minute, 2 minutes. It doesn't take a lot to get a lot of reward or benefit from it. So I think of mindfulness as creating islands of calm in a sea of busy. So my invitation to you is just think about like where you might insert those little islands of calm. And if you need a starting spot, one place to place these mindfulness moments can be at the middle of the day, around that 2, 3 o'clock time frame when we tend to have a natural slump in our energy. This can be a way to really like pull yourself back together and refresh your system.
Okay, great. So, everyone, thank you again for joining today. This has been Knowledge at Noon. Mindfulness, a foundation for meaningful connection. Jonathan, joined by faculty Jen Miller here. And so we'll see you at the next one. And thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, bye everyone.